It's brand new, Season 2. I'm Marissa Thalberg.
And I'm Stephen Wolf-Bedeta, and we're excited to be back having bigger, bolder, and always real conversations.
Straight from the C-suite front lines of marketing, media, and more.
We have great friends joining from people you may know, like Wilmer Valderrama and Bobby Burke.
And people you'll want to know. So grab a coffee or, hey, even an Aperol Spritz and come join us on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart.
Listen to Brand New on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You don't put those inside of you, do you?
This is a show about women.
I mean, you do?
Yes. Finally, a show about women that isn't just a thinly veiled aspirational nightmare. It's not hosted, not narrated. We're just dropping into a woman's world.
I found out when my dad was gay when I was 10. We were in a convertible on the 405 freeway, listening to the B-52s. And looking back, I should have said, this is gay. This is already all gay.
Listen to Finally a Show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello. From Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, host of Womanica, a daily podcast that introduces you to the fascinating lives of women history has forgotten. We've always been intrigued by stories of disappearances. Whether it's a fraudster from the 17th century who kept evading the authorities, or a novelist who taunted the Nazis and faked her own death, we all want to know, what happened next? To find out, listen to Womanica on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 401, How to Keep Your Garden Alive with Nicole Johnsey Burke.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And this interview was potentially life-changing for me. Did not go in thinking that, because I am not a gardener, and I left really not just fired up to start a garden, because anybody can make you motivated by their success, right? But I have left with an intrinsic value for the journey of gardening. And if that's not what we're trying to do with spending money and frugality, I don't know what we're doing. But she left that in me.
You will get to hear Jen's transformation right before your ears.
right in your ears.
Right into your ears. And for me too, I love gardening. I would say it is one of my top 3 hobbies. And I walked away with some pieces of, oh yeah, that's how I can bring refinement to it. Oh, that's the missing link on this thing that I've been questioning for a while. So you're already tuned in. Just stay with us.
Yes. But first, this episode is brought to you by weeds. They grow very fast. And some people even think that herbs like basil are weeds. And sometimes we don't like them. Sometimes we want to get rid of them. But sometimes, if you think basil is a weed, you should welcome them. You should welcome these weeds that we can eat, especially if they grow really well. Kind of like keeping your money in a high-yield savings account. When you put your money in a high-yield savings account like CIT that's got over 4% APY, it is going to be growing like a weed. And that is a weed that we will gladly accept. frugalfriendspodcast.com/CIT and start your garden in your savings account.
Speaking of weeds, we polled you all in our friend letter about gardening. Do you garden? What's your biggest struggle? You all were neck and neck. There really wasn't like a winner answer.
Yeah.
You were across the board. Yeah, but I can't keep my plants alive. Yeah, but bugs and pests keep eating my stuff. Yeah, but I have a different struggle. Or no, it's not for me. So there are some of you that's no, it's not for me. If you're tuning in, you're going to probably be transformed and start to have a value for it.
But an overwhelming majority of you do garden or want to garden. And so this episode is really tailored for it's the midpoint between Jill and I. I started this not wanting to have a garden at all. That was me. I was like, nope, not for me. And Jill was like, yes, I love it, but I have all of these different struggles. And so she answered all of our questions, even the questions we didn't know we had, and a lot of yours, because a lot of your struggles that you let us know, like what's holding you back is the time to water it. A lot of you said weeds. A lot of you said weeds. 100-degree temperatures are holding you back. She covers that. Just all of the things that you guys mentioned as feedback in the polls, we really made it a point to point these things out so that you feel like you've gotten a little more assurance that if you want to start a garden, it will work for you this time.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to tune into other episodes like this, we've got episode 290, going plant-based on a budget. We've got episode 298, no-cost ways to be more eco-friendly. So these are really adjacent content episodes that you could queue up, but stick with us as we talk to Nicole.
Yes. Nicole Johnsey Burke, she has written 2 books, Kitchen Garden Revival and Leaves, Roots, and Fruit. So this is really an episode about growing food, growing plants that will nourish you. But she has an online community of over 1.5 million people. She's taught over 6,000 students in her online Kitchen Garden Academy and Garden Consultant certification courses. And she is a really good teacher, I think. Like, just from hearing her in this one interview, I'm so excited to learn more from her. So I hope you will be too.
Let's do it.
Nicole, welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. We are super excited for this conversation. It's going to be a fun one.
It is. I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me. And, before we started, you told me you had given up on gardening. So I feel like I've been dared to talk you back into it today. So I'm ready.
Yeah.
And that's exciting for me, just to be a fly on the wall, to watch you just kind of bully Jen into what's going to be best for her, really.
Yes.
Because gardening and plants are my happy place. Granted, I am still learning. What I learned from most people is you are always learning. So that's comforting. But I personally am looking forward to this conversation because there's a lot of questions I have.
Yeah. And
Me
in full
too.
disclosure,
it's a lifelong journey.
My father-in-law is a commercial farmer. He has a U-pick farm and a winery, and he can grow anything. He can bring anything back to life. And so I've heard
him do it.
I've heard these things before, like you can't kill this and stuff like that. And I assure him,
she takes that as a dare. That's her dare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
She's like, oh, watch me kill this plant.
Yeah, not intentionally. It's just me. So
I got it.
Yeah, but I know that there's a lot of people out there like me that want to get better at gardening. So let's just start out, like, for someone who hasn't totally given up on green yet, hasn't totally given up on gardening. How would you, but they have killed things before. What would be your starting point? Where would you recommend someone like me start?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's in your head. Like to kind of, there's this funny thing that happens with gardening. I don't know. I think part of it is because there is a magical piece to this where we literally don't get it. Like, we put a seed in the ground and then, months later, we're eating something from that seed. It started this small and it became, a watermelon. And so I think there's a piece of gardening that people have kind of pushed off to be magical. And I call it the green thumb myth, which is you're either born with this ability to keep plants alive or you're not, right? It's like Harry Potter. Like, you're either a witch or you're a muggle. Was that what it was called? Yeah. You're either a witch or you're a muggle, right? And so most of us assume, like, we put that first seed or we buy that plant from Home Depot and it dies immediately, or we buy it and we're kind of like, we're waiting for our name to come out of the hat, right? Like, do we have the green thumb or do we not? And that is, there's really, nothing that could be further from the truth. Like, gardening is a skill, right? And so like you ladies have developed this skill of frugality, and it's not like you were born with it. You didn't like come out of the womb and go like, I know how to stretch $1, like I know how to make a budget. You weren't born with this ability to make a budget. You've learned it and it's a skill. And so just like you guys could totally teach me a thing or two or 25 about frugality, it's the same with gardening. It's a skill. It's something that you want to have you want to pick a teacher. That's generally what I recommend. Like, don't just forage Google and YouTube for every single gardener's opinion out there. So you want to pick in general one method that you want to study under, whether a person grows in raised beds or they have, they're doing the no dig method and they're growing in big rows and they're farming, or if you want to follow a homesteader, like pick your style and pick your teacher and your method, and then commit to practicing. And so it's just like, if I was like today, I'm like, hey, I want to take up pickleball, right? Which I've never played a day in my life. I'm not going to go out to the court and, grab whatever it is they have, I guess, a little paddle or something, and expect to be good, right? Because I've never played before. And so gardening is the exact same thing. You're just you don't start by going to buy a plant, right? You start by picking a method, taking some classes, or, getting a book, reading about it, and then committing to showing up to practice, say 5 minutes a day, doing a little bit at a time. And so I think that, that's kind of one of my big like soapboxes is let's stop the madness of going to Home Depot in April, buying a ton of plants, taking them home, watching them all die, and then assuming that gardening's not for you and, you just don't have a green thumb, because it's really just a skill. So that would be the very first step, I would say, for everyone listening, is get out of your head that, it's a magical thing and you either get it or you don't. See it as a skill, just like any other thing we build into our lives that we didn't grow up doing. And most of us, it sounds like for you guys, even though your grandfather was in the farm, like most of us didn't grow up. If you grew up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, most of us haven't grown up near a garden. And so it's not your fault. That's like that's my 4 favorite words to say to people. It's not your fault.
Right.
Like, it's not your fault that all the plants die, that you haven't been able to keep anything alive yet, because you just didn't grow up with it. And so it's something we have to teach ourselves and learn as adults.
This is such a good soapbox, because this is one of my issues. Even though my favorite place to be is outside and digging in dirt, still not doing it expertly. But that's one of the things that trips me up is I might start doing one thing, and then I'm on the internet and all these things are now popping up in my Instagram feed about, well, here's how to do this right. And then I get in my head about, oh man, I started it this way. Should I not have done that? And you're kind of just continuously reinventing or jumping ship or hopping around because there's now some new information that maybe that's the more important thing. So your advice to pick one person and learn, it's kind of like what we talk about in the personal finance space. Like you can start with one person. We actually recommend it. But then once you become more of a master at that skill, that's when you can kind of start to branch out once you understand the fundamentals. And that's what I'm hearing from you is get the fundamentals with like one thing, not the cluttering of voices.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like go deep, right? Go deep instead of going wide. Take some time to pick your method and pick, your teacher. But I learned this in college. I had a professor who he just studied so fully one author and basically read all the books by this one author, and essentially became like the expert on this author. And then later, would choose another author to go deep on. And essentially, you could like pick their brain, and it was almost like talking to the author directly. And I think that's a thing we're in this is a great information age, but it's information overload for most of us. And especially now that, all of us are entertained by 3 to 5 second videos on Instagram and TikTok. It's like, you only need to be online for 2 minutes and you've already seen probably 20 garden projects, right? I've thought about doing a video that's like, stop saving garden projects you're never going to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
It's like, we don't need any more ideas, right? We don't need any more ideas. We just need to practice. And I love the idea of 5 minutes, just putting it in your calendar. My next book actually coming out is going to be on gardening habits. And I did a lot of study on habit building. I'm sure y'all have read Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
And I read a BJ Fogg's book. He actually inspired Atomic Habits, James Clear. It's called, the Tiny Habits.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. Tiny Habits. And he talks so much about the stacks, right? Like just taking something you normally do already and then just attaching that new habit onto it. And so I would say my next recommendation would be like pay attention to the flavors and the taste that you like, especially all the green things. So any herbal flavors that you love, any greens, lettuces, anything that is just green. So we're not going to fruit yet, but green things. Pay attention to those that you love buying, that you love using in your recipes, and grow those first. The green things are the simplest, easiest to grow. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, later. But pay attention to those and grow those things first. That's how you build the habit, right? So if I could convince you to start, I would say, and maybe we can do this little practice. What's a green that you frequently buy from the grocery?
Kale.
Okay, kale. Kale, yeah. So I'm so glad you said that because it's such an easy one. So I would say to you, just start with kale. And like, how do you use kale in the kitchen?
Kale salads. Like I'll meal prep kale salads almost weekly.
Okay, and you prep it for the whole week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So what you would do is then, like, let's say, do you do it like on a weekend, like a Saturday or Sunday?
Usually on a Sunday, yeah.
Okay, so what you'd want to do is like habit stack that, right? So take that time when you're prepping your kale, and it'll start, obviously, you have the kale from the grocery, but at that same time that you're prepping your kale salads for the for lunch, right before it or right after it, you're going to go take care of your kale garden, right? So your kale plants. So you would, the first day is going to be, okay, right now I just did my kale. I'm thinking about kale. I'm going to go source everything I need to plant my kale. So I'm going to get seeds and some soil in a container and make sure I have a water source. Then the next week, you could go and be like, all right, this is my planting day, right? I just prepped my kale. I know this is of value to me. And then that's the day you plant it. And then every week when you're doing that meal prep, you attach that to, now for 5 minutes, I'm going to go and work on my kale garden so that, 2 months from now, I'm not buying this from the store anymore. It's coming out of this garden. And so you just connect that 5 minutes. You already know this is a value to you. It'd be huge to replace this from the grocery. And so you just attach a little bit of a habit right after you do that thing in the kitchen.
Yeah, this is kind of already blowing my mind because we're finishing up writing our book, and it's about reframing spending as a skill instead of something that you're naturally good at or naturally bad at. And so I feel super convicted because I just wrote about how to master a skill, and like the Japanese have this like shuhari of like first you study under one master, and then as you get better, then you expand until you transcend and have your own way of doing things. And so like I literally just was revising that chapter this week.
I love
She's
it.
already getting, I wanted to see her kick you around more. I wanted more spice to this.
Immediately
So I
convicted.
will say this is it, and this is going to be the same thing for your reader, right? For everyone who's listening. The only thing that actually, I say this a lot, like we all have our excuses, right? But in general, like the reason why I don't save money and I'm not budgeting is because I don't want to. Right. And I don't want to because I don't see the value in it. Right. It in some way, I don't see the payoff for the work. And I would say 99.9% of people who don't garden yet, they'll say it's because they don't have a green thumb, they don't have enough space, they don't have enough sun, they don't have enough time, they don't have enough money, whatever. But really, if it boils down to it, they just don't see the value in it.
Yeah.
And because they don't see the value in it, they don't want to. because we do what we want to do, right? Like we scroll
Yep.
Instagram because we like it. And so, so that's like one of my biggest things. And I'm sure you guys feel this too, is like, the bigger thing is not, can I convince you that you could have a garden, that you could create a green thumb? The bigger question is, can I convince you that it's worth it? You know, can I convince you that this is worth your time, that it's not just worth it, it's essential. Like it's part of the human experience that you're missing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, then let's go there. Because I was going to ask you about someone, you know, like low maintenance people who are low on time, which that could be true. You might have a lot going on in life, but how do we get to the point of valuing it so that we can make the most of even what little time we have?
Yeah. So there's so many things that, you know, we see as challenges, right? So let's just name, and y'all can help me out on this. Like, what are some of the like current challenges we all face? You know, especially like your listeners, I'm guessing, are somewhat like you, probably somewhat like me, right? So we're busy. What's another challenge? We're stressed out, probably.
Tired.
We're trying to like connect with the people we care the most about, right? Like kids or spouses or parents, or like even just have real relationships these days, right? So like connecting in physical spaces with people. I'm guessing we're all trying to stay healthy, maybe not gain weight or get weight off or just feel good in our bodies.
Mentally exhausted.
Yes.
We want to be good stewards of our resources. So like, not waste money, but invest it in the right places.
Yeah. And then I think we all have like a guilt complex about the environment and climate. We all know we should do more. We don't know what to do. And then I think we're all struggling with anxiety and depression. Right. And so if you go back, if you look at the science, but also if you go back a century, when we were connected to the production of our food. So Joel Salatin is a famous guy, and he owns Polyface Farms. And he has a famous quote of like, in the 1920s, our food wasn't in grocery stores. Our food was in our backyards. It was down the street. It was in community gardens. It was at farmers markets. And that since the 1940s, essentially like after World War II, all of our food moved to grocery stores, and we all suddenly got disconnected. So for me, what this looked like was food addiction in high school and college, where I was eating tons of food. I didn't know how to process my feelings. I was rarely spending time outside. And food to me was like this evil thing that made me fat in my mind and that I should avoid, but I needed it for energy. And so I had this really bad disconnect with food where I saw it as the enemy rather than as my friend. And I lived overseas for a couple years and got introduced to the idea of seasonal food and food right from the earth and food that's fresh rather than preserved. And went through just this huge learning of my disconnect with food was actually the cause of the food addiction. It wasn't that I couldn't stop eating. It wasn't that I was a quote unquote like terrible person or a lost person. It was just I had grown up and it was just more like a product of my culture. So essentially what we're all these things we're fighting, the busyness, the anxiety, the depression, the wanting to take care of our bodies, needing energy, needing to connect. So many of these things get solved in a garden. So just imagine that all of us, everyone listening, has this spot. It could just be one box, right? It's got herbs and greens and a few more special things, but it's small. It doesn't even have to be big, 16 square feet, all right? And every morning you go out there, when you wake up, you go outside. Science has shown when you're outside and the sun is coming up, your dopamines come on, your cortisol slows down. You feel good, right? You've got the air outside. You've got the sky above your head. You're only out there for a minute. You grab some mint, you grab some anise hyssop, you grab some rosemary, go inside, make yourself a cup of hot tea. Go through your day. It's lunchtime. If you get to be home, if you don't, you can do this before you leave for work. You cut a big basket of greens, go inside, rinse this salad off, and now you've got the base of your lunch that you're going to eat either at work or at home. So you're sitting there, you're eating things that came right out of the garden. It's like you can't get fresher, you can't get more nutritious. You can't get more vitamins and variety than what you just grabbed from this little box, right? Then you go through the rest of your day, you hit the end of the day. Generally people are turning on the TV. They're like, zoning out, scrolling, whatever. Everybody's disconnected. Instead, everybody in your household heads out to the garden to grab a few things for dinner that night. It takes 3 to 5 minutes. Everybody has a moment where they clear their head. They get to see the sun go down. You get to see the crazy things that happen that grew overnight while you were, working and doing your own thing. Go inside, make a big pasta dish with some herb sauce and maybe put on some peas or, whatever the little extra bit that you harvested from the garden that night. Maybe put some flowers in a vase that you pulled from the yard. And then at the end of the day, you could go just sit out there, watch the sunset, maybe just take a little walk and water your garden before night. So in probably 5 to 10 minutes of your day, that's all it took. You got yourself outside, which we know proves like totally changes all the emotions and energy. You filled yourself up with some of the most nutritious food. You actually can't get it through vitamins. You can't get it through grocery store varieties. You connected with your family and your loved ones. You had a moment of like a memory maker where you're out there connecting together. You cleared your head. You got yourself off your phone, away from a screen, outside at least 2 to 3 times that day. And you also stewarded the environment. All these plants are feeding butterflies and bees and, supporting wildlife and the ecosystem. And you use less plastic, you have less food waste, and you save money.
This is Neil Strauss, host of the Tenderfoot TV true crime podcast, To Live and Die in LA. I'm here to tell you about the new podcast I've been undercover investigating for the last 1.5 years. It's called To Die For. Here's a clip.
All these girls were sent out into the world and they were told, try to meet important men, try to attach yourself to important men.
The voice you're hearing is a Russian model agent telling me about spies sent out to seduce men with political power.
The war in Ukraine is also being fought by all these girls that are all over important cities.
For the first time, a military-trained seduction spy reveals how the Russian government turned sex and love into a deadly weapon.
If you want to kill your target, it's easy. You just seduce him, take him somewhere, start having sex, and then he's very vulnerable, so you can kill him easily.
To Die For is available now. Listen for free on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm preaching to somebody today who is waiting for God to give you your next step. And you don't know what it is yet. You need God to show you your next step. Because God, I can't stay where I am, like I am, where it is. This isn't going to work. I have to move on, but I don't know where. A lot of time you'll use it as an excuse. Well, I don't know how. I don't know where. I don't know what. God, if you show me. God, if you tell me. God, if... No. You know enough right now. And if you needed to know more, he would show you.
Hey, this is Stephen Furtick. I want to invite you to listen to my podcast, Elevation with Stephen Furtick. I am here to help you for the battles that you face in life, for the times when you feel discouraged, for the times that you need guidance from God. I want to give you the truth of what he says about you to help you rise to your full potential. Listen to Elevation with Stephen Furtick every Sunday and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Tamika D. Mallory.
And it's your boy, my son, the General.
And we are your hosts of TMI. New year, new name, new energy, but...
same old us. Oh, yeah.
And catch us every Wednesday on the Black Effect Network, breaking down social and civil rights issues, pop culture, and politics, in hopes of pushing our culture forward to make the world a better place for generations to come. But that's not all. We will also have special guests to add their thoughts on the topics, as well as break down different political issues with local activists in their community. If you like to be informed and to expand your thoughts, listen to TMI on the Black Effect Podcast Network, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
Okay. I'm bought in. I already kind of was. It sounds really idyllic, but I am going to want to get into some of the nitty gritty too.
Let's do it. But did I convince you? I was trying my hardest to convince you.
You're such a good like storyteller in that, because I saw myself outside with my 2 sons
wearing a prairie dress,
not wearing a prairie dress, but just like out there, like letting them experience where food comes from and what our earth can do for us. And like being a part of that. And that, I'm here. For it.
She's here for it.
I love it. Okay, I did my job. Now I can answer your questions.
But now for the nuts and bolts, though, because a couple of things came to mind. And so whatever you want to tackle first, but I'm thinking about pests and like remedies for common plant diseases. I'm thinking about seasonality. Like it feels kind of like what you described is very much for most people in North America, very much a summer experience. So kind of what are we talking where we can have some of these foods regularly? What about squirrels and birds and deer and skunk and rabbits? And what about plant diseases? And what about the soil? I'm throwing it all at you, but I want to get the most.
Okay. So I'm going to start at the top and we'll go down. Okay. So first, let's talk timing. So I teach something in my book, Kitchen Garden Revival, called the Arc of the Seasons. Where do you guys live?
We live in Florida, so we get it all.
So you're easy. You're easy peasy. But if you're listening and you live in Wisconsin or Canada or somewhere very cold, I've gardened from Houston all the way to Chicago. So what I just described to you in Houston, I did every day. In Chicago, I did from February to December.
Whoa.
All right. So it works in cold and hot places. Obviously, there's a month or two where it's not happening in a cold climate, but it can still happen in a greenhouse with a cold frame. There's ways you can make it happen. So most people talk about frost dates, like you can only garden after your last frost date and before your first frost date. So I teach, ignore that. More of what we're talking about is seasons. So we have a cold season, a cool season, a warm season, and a hot season. So for you guys in Florida, you're probably going something like cool season in the middle of winter, like from November to January, where you're going to do lots of greens, lots of peas, lots of root crops. You have maybe a chance of frost, but probably not. Am I right?
Not, probably
maybe
not.
like 1 or 2 days.
Yes. Okay, so Houston was the same. So you're going to have lettuce from October until March.
I love that.
October to March. So all the greens, the kale, all that kind of stuff, that's October to March. As soon as you pass Valentine's Day, essentially, you move into what I call the warm season. That's when there's no chance of frost. And that's your best time to grow tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, zucchini, all those quintessential summer things. For you guys, that's actually a spring and a fall thing. So you do warm season plants in the spring. In the summer, you guys move really high. And that's what we call the hot season. We had that in Houston. So that's when you're going to grow okra, eggplant, sweet potatoes, all those things that you associate with like equatorial climates. You'll do those June to August. And then you mirror it. That's why I call it the arc. On the other side in the fall, you're going to do a warm season garden again. So you'll get to do fall tomatoes, fall cucumbers, fall beans, all that kind of stuff. For me in Nashville, I'm a little bit lower. So I'm in what I call a mild climate. So mine goes cool, warm, a little bit of hot, just like for a 3 to 4 weeks, back to warm and then to cool again. I do have a cold season right in the middle. And then in Chicago, I had kind of a long cold season from something like December to February was our cold season. And so the season I got 2 of in Chicago is 2 cool seasons. So I had a cool season in the spring and a cool season in the fall, while you guys have warm seasons. So there are plants to match every season, right? So there's loads of plants that grow in the cool season, loads of plants that grow in the warm season. So the way I teach, the method I teach is that you're always planting the next season. So you guys right now, you'd be planting your warm season garden. You're going to enjoy that for the next 2 to 3 months. And then as soon as you hit June, you start pulling things as they finish and moving to the hot season. and then go another 2 to 3 months and then start again. So that's the timing piece of this is basically we're always planting, or we're always planning to plant. And I know one of your questions is like low maintenance, right? Like we're busy. And so another piece of this is planting a lot. So I know like a common teaching for gardening is start small, but I actually recommend the opposite. So at least if you're having just one bed, don't have blank spaces. Like when I look down in your garden, when you start yours, 6 weeks after planting, I wouldn't want to see any open soil. And so that's actually what makes a garden low maintenance. I learned this from going to national parks. Speaking of frugal vacations, my family loves to go to national parks, and I was just starting to garden. And I would notice we were out in Big Bend, actually in a desert. And I noticed the plants there, they were surviving in a desert with like no care, right? No fertilizers, no pesticides. And they were just plants thriving in a very harsh condition. And I noticed I never saw a plant that was by itself. Plants were always bunched very close together, growing. It was a variety of sizes, but you could never see the ground in the areas where the plants were growing. And so I've learned that's what a low maintenance garden is. It's a garden that's packed with plants, so much so that the soil isn't exposed. And that leads to your next question about pests and disease. One of the reasons we end up with weeds and pests and soil that isn't good is we're taught to space out our plants because most of the directions out there are for farmers. And so it'll say like, put a tomato here and then give it 3 feet and then plant another tomato. Have you guys seen these directions?
Yes. Yes. And I've ignored them. I'm like, I can't do this.
Good. Okay. Well,
shove it in.
you're my kind of person because I do the same thing. And I realize basically those rules are for farmers, but also those rules ignore the way nature works, right? You would never see just one plant. Like I have a woods behind my home and it's covered in green. Every piece of the ground is covered. There's something growing there. And that's the way nature likes to work. And so a way to deal with pests and disease and challenges is you actually plant more the way nature does. That's what my second book, Leaves, Roots, and Fruit, is all about, is essentially you plant the centers of your beds with fruiting plants, those that are going to be big and take a long time to develop. Then you plant your medium-sized plants along that, and then small-sized plants like your leafy greens and herbs along the outside. And what happens is when you plant all these varieties of plants together, you're helping with pests because pests love a buffet. And so when you break up your plants like this and combine them, pests are like, wait, I really liked that one plant, but this one doesn't taste good, right? So they might eat from one plant, but it's not like they're going to destroy the entire bed all at once. These different plants work together. So you have herbs and flowers that put off smells and scents that can repel pests and help with pest protection. And then you're going to have healthier soil because covered soil is a healthier soil. It dries out slower and it loses its nutrients slower as well. So, okay, pests, timing. You asked some more questions. What were they?
Plant diseases.
Okay, plant diseases, I put them in the exact same category as pests. If you think about you never watch like Animal Planet, you know? And it's like the bad guys coming and who gets taken when the bad animal's coming to like attack the predators on its way.
The slowest one.
Yes. So then the slowest one is generally going to be the youngest, the oldest, or the injured. Right. And so in the garden, it's the exact same. The plants you have to be the most careful about are the youngest, the oldest, and the injured. Those are going to be the most likely to get pests, to get disease, and to cause, challenges in the garden. So I try with the smallest, with the youngest, those are the ones I try to protect the most. So you watch after those, you do, that is a period of time where you, like when you plant your kale garden, you want to water it every day for the first 2 weeks. You want to be watching out for those tender little young plants because those are very susceptible. At the end of their life cycle, you want to keep an eye out because they're going to be the most likely to attract pests and disease. And so those are the first ones you want to take out of the garden. That's why I really promote seasonal planting. You really don't want a plant in the garden for more than 65 to 90, at the most 120 days. So taking those out And then finally, the plants that are injured. So plants that, maybe weren't great coming in from the nursery or just have never taken off or just have some issues. Generally, those are ones I'll prune back and watch. And if they don't seem to improve, I pull those out as well. So my concept in the garden with pests and disease is stay on the offense. So I think a lot of people get stressed out about all the things that can go wrong. And what I try to do is just focus on the good inputs. You guys probably do this too with your budgeting, right? So I worry less about the bad guys and I worry more about what's something good I can do for my garden today. Mm-hmm. So how can I prune it or water it or add compost? Like what are good things I can bring in? And generally, I'll have to be honest, I spend very little time dealing with pest or disease because I'm just focused on the better stuff. Is there pest and disease? Absolutely. If you're going to have, that's a thing we should just clear up. If you're going to have an organic garden, pest and disease will be there. Mm-hmm. Just part of the deal. Mm-hmm. But guess what? All the food that you're buying from the grocery store that's organically grown, they've got pests and disease around them too, but just way bigger. So it's part of the food you're eating already. You just don't see it. One lady, she was like, I was trying to convince her to garden. She's like, ew, I just can't stand the thought of like bugs crawling all over my food. Ew. She's like, I just can't do it. And I was like, well, I hate to break it to you, but bugs are crawling all over your food. Like you just don't, you're just not aware, right? It's just part of the process that you missed. But yeah, it is part of it, but definitely like intensively planting, keeping your garden full. And then like we talked about before, like prioritizing those things you definitely know you want to eat from the garden, because like that kind of idyllic scenario I told you of like a day with a garden, there's a saying like the best fertilizer in the garden is your shadow. And it's essentially the same, like the best pest control in a garden is your shadow. So I try to have things that I don't buy at the grocery so that I have to go outside to get them, right? Because they're not in the fridge. So I need this thing for a recipe or for a dish. I have to go to the garden to get it. And then while I'm out there, I'll see, oh, oops, like looks like there's a bug is eating that plant, or, oh, there's a hole in that leaf, right? And so you catch stuff a lot sooner rather than it getting away from you.
Now with that, this is a really specific question. Okay, we're following kind of one master, and so we're not getting all the clutter of everybody else's ideas. But then once we start to see an issue that we want to solve for, would you recommend at that point it's okay to Google, hey, what's happening with my lemon tree? Or is it still best to try and find like, what's the one master saying about this thing? Or is that when we can open the floodgates to the internet?
I think you can, but I see that also as like, I think we underestimate our own wisdom. And so something I teach in my first book, Kitchen Garden Revival, in chapter 7 on tending, is the concept, think about nature. And I think we've gotten so accustomed to going to the internet or going to the store for a solution. I just want to remind everybody, like, nature's amazing. Like nature knows how to protect itself. The plants want to protect themselves. So I have just a little practice that I recommend. So if you have an issue, cut away the issue, add compost to the plant. It's essentially like giving vitamins to the plant, and then watch it. And so that's like my just simple remedy. If you have an issue, like cut away the problem, add compost to support the plant, because 9 times out of 10, the plant will self-rescue. Yes, you can totally look it up. I'm not against that at all. But as a mom, I know you probably felt this too. Like I've had an issue with, say, like something happens to my kid or they have like a bruise somewhere or something, and I Google it. And that's like the absolutely worst thing I could ever do, because suddenly like my kid is dying, And so like I go to a very deep, dark place. So I would just say beware, and also just don't discount how smart you are. Think about nature, think about the way nature solves its own problems, and then just kind of partner with nature in solving that problem.
Oh, that simplifies things so much.
I know.
It's so helpful.
You are essentially telling us, and we're not paying you to be here. You're telling us like pretty much all the things we tell people to think about when they're spending money and how to save money, but you're talking about it in like plant psychology where we talk about spending psychology.
Yeah.
And it's blowing my mind. I never thought to think about gardening in this way.
Yay.
And it's very cool.
Awesome.
I don't know that I've got like too much more. I feel like you brought this so full circle of like, here's all the issues, because truly that is one of my biggest things is it's not just fear of what's going to happen. It's seeing that these things are happening. It's seeing that those seeds never took. They just didn't grow. I don't know if squirrels or birds got to them, but they never grew. And there's some things that do happen in my garden that can take the wind out of my sails, or it feels like so laborious to now have to look up. Now I just kind of planted and I was excited and I'm going willy-nilly with it. But now it feels like, well, I have to be an expert on all of these specific types of plants, and the internet has so much information, and what do I do? And then I just walk away and my garden doesn't see my shadow. And so I feel like you've brought these really helpful tethering points of really it's a habit issue for me. I'll be excited one Saturday of the month, and then I just want the thing to do its thing, but I've not created a habit to go visit this every day. My garden's not seeing my shadow, and how many of my issues would have been resolved if that were the case. Like, it's not like it needs this whole herkin effort for its lifetime. It needs maybe, that one day, and then these habits along the way. So I'm just reflecting back and highlighting, I think, the things that are important for us to glean from here. And I appreciate that you're highlighting food that we can eat. I mean, of course, having plants and greenery in the house and outside and flowers are exciting, but I think the value of this plant is serving a purpose for us. And so we're getting emotional and mental health through being out in our garden, but then we're also getting the nutrients that our body needs. So just thank you. You've brought everything full circle.
I do have one question. So where do I start? Like, where's the best place to find starter seeds, or what's the best? What do I need to start? Just okay.
Simply. So my book, Leaves, Roots, and Fruit. So if you're, if you want to learn from me, then this book, Kitchen Garden Revival, is setting up the garden. So I do raised beds, trellises. I like to set up a garden nicely. All right. Some people would say fancy, but it doesn't have to be fancy. My thing is, if you have a beautiful garden, if you have a garden that you think is beautiful, I don't have to think it's beautiful, but if you think your garden is beautiful, you will go there more. And so I would say, whatever you do, even if it's just a container, whatever you set up, make it beautiful as you can afford, as beautiful as you want to afford. Because the prettier you think it is, the more you're going to take pictures of it. And the more you take pictures of it, the more you'll notice it. And the more you notice it, the more you'll want to go there.
And the more you post about it on Instagram, the more motivation you'll have to keep it up. Exactly. So people don't ask, why'd you stop posting about it?
We're all about motivation. It's all about motivation. So this is all about the setup. I talk about soil and water and planting. And then the latter part of the book is all about the plants. If you're a beginner gardener, or you already have the garden set up and you want to dig into the plants, then my second book would be for you, and it's called Leaves, Roots, and Fruit. And it is a step-by-step system to learn how to garden. So I start with the very simplest, which is growing sprouts and microgreens inside. So for your listeners who are in a cold climate, this would be your answer for what to do in the coldest part of the winter. But we go from leaves. So I do sprouts and microgreens in chapter 1. Step 2 is herbs. So that would be the next place I'd tell you to start. Then salad greens. So herbs and salad greens, you're going to get the most bang for your buck, the biggest ROI, and so prolific. So for one plant, you will harvest week after week after week after week. So you just get a huge payout, a lot less stress. There's less pests, there's less disease, and it's just a shorter lifespan, right? So it's like training someone to run a 5K versus a marathon. So leafy plants are the 5K. All right. So if you're just training yourself, like I'm ready to start this, you don't have to sign up for a marathon yet. It's okay. Right. So leaves first. Next up is roots. So that's like radishes, beets, carrots. Those are going to be harder, take longer time, need a little bit more skill. Two simple ones you guys could do would be potatoes and garlic. Those are easier. They do take more time, but they're not, they're pretty dependable. And then the last stage is the fruit. So that's all the ones we talked about: tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, zucchini, squash, the plants that stay in the garden for 3, 4, 5 months. That's your marathon. So you can totally run a marathon if you want to on your first go. I just want you to know that's what you signed up for. Because a lot of people buy that marathon plant. That's their very first plant that they buy. And then they come home and they're like, it didn't work. And I'm like, well, yeah, you like went for a marathon on your first run. Like I just ran to the end of the block, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm a runner, so like I get that. And I love the 5K distance. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And I love herbs and salad greens. That's what I like buy most consistently.
And it sounds
you want to talk about frugality. There's a book, the guy who wrote Square Foot Gardening, Bartholomew, I just forgot his first name. He also wrote a book called High Value Veggies. You guys should get this, especially for your audience. And he details which plants in the garden you get the biggest ROI on. And so he did this math equation of like, it costs this much, it takes up this much space. How much do you get in harvest from this, right? Guess what the first 14 plants are?
Salad greens.
I thought that too. It's all herbs.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, because they're so expensive.
Yeah. So a half ounce at my grocery store, a half ounce in a plastic box at the grocery is $3.99.
Jeez.
And from one plant, you can grow 2 to 3 pounds.
Wow.
So do the math on that.
And that's something you can do indoors year round. So even if you don't have a yard where you can do the type of gardening that we've been describing, it sounds like there's options for people.
Yeah.
Indoors,
totally.
in apartments.
Yeah. Herbs are like, I'm on a mission to get everybody growing their own herbs because it's easy, it's prolific, and you will save a ton of money.
You know what's easy and prolific? And I'm on a mission every episode.
Yeah.
To get to this point.
The Bill of the Week.
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Nicole, every week we yell at our guests and invite them to share with us their bill for the week. And we would love to hear yours.
So my bill is big. I have 4 kids. They're all teenagers, 2 dogs, and then a very hungry husband. And so my grocery bill is sky high, especially since 2020. But I will tell you what I'm so proud of is that on that grocery bill, there is not a single green and there is not a single herb. And it doesn't mean that we don't eat salads or have herbs. In fact, right now, every single day for the last 2 weeks, I have cut myself a giant size salad. And I'm talking like consider an entire box of spring mix. Okay. I have a friend who she challenges people to eat a pound of produce a day. So I've been trying to do that.
Whoa.
And so I want you to think about a spring mix box. All right. That's what I'm harvesting every day. At the grocery store, that costs $7.99. And so I'm just going to say I've harvested, that would be 8 times 7, $56 worth of salad this week. And that was not on my grocery bill. So I'm not going to tell you how high my bill was because it did include many other things, but it did not include any salad.
The day I can start growing applesauce pouches would be the day that I drop everything else in my life and just like commit fully to gardening. Like, invest.
We can't grow apples here.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Yeah, you're gonna maybe strawberries, oranges.
Strawberries.
Too bad the kids don't like orange sauce because that would be a
They
big
do
one.
love oranges, and my father-in-law has I think it's tangerine trees, and they're best known for their strawberries. And we get 2 crops of strawberries a year. So
that's
it's
money
nice
right there.
to go pick them for free.
Yes.
That's a perk.
Absolutely. That's huge.
Well, if you all listening have a bill about your best bill being not spending as much because you're just implementing problem solving and creativity and gardening or just anything else. Your name is Bill. You like someone named Bill. You know the drill. FrugalFriendsPodcast.com/Bill. We're ready for it.
This is Neil Strauss, host of the Tenderfoot TV True Crime Podcast, To Live and Die in LA. I'm here to tell you about the new podcast I've been undercover investigating for the last year and a half. It's called To Die For. Here's a clip.
All these girls were sent out into the world and they were told, try to meet important men, try to attach yourself to important men.
The voice you're hearing is a Russian model agent telling me about spies sent out to seduce men with political power.
The war in Ukraine is also being fought by all these girls that are all over important cities.
For the first time, a military-trained seduction spy reveals how the Russian government turned sex and love into a deadly weapon.
If you want to kill your target, it's easy. You just seduce him, take him somewhere, start having sex, and then he's very vulnerable, so you can kill him easily.
To Die For is available now. Listen for free on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm preaching to somebody today who is waiting for God to give you your next step. And you don't know what it is yet. You need God to show you your next step. Because God, I can't stay where I am, like I am, where it is. This isn't going to work. I have to move on, but I don't know where. A lot of time you'll use it as an excuse. Well, I don't know how. I don't know where. I don't know what. God, if you show me. God, if you tell me. God, if... No. You know enough right now. And if you needed to know more, he would show you.
Hey, this is Stephen Furtick. I want to invite you to listen to my podcast, Elevation with Stephen Furtick. I am here to help you for the battles that you face in life, for the times when you feel discouraged, for the times that you need guidance from God. I want to give you the truth of what he says about you to help you rise to your full potential. Listen to Elevation with Stephen Furtick every Sunday and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Tamika D. Mallory.
And it's your boy, my son, the General.
And we are your hosts of TMI. New year, new name, new energy, but...
same old us.
And catch us every Wednesday on the Black Effect Network, breaking down social and civil rights issues, pop culture, and politics in hopes of pushing our culture forward to make the world a better place for generations to come. But that's not all. We will also have special guests to add their thoughts on the topics, as well as break down different political issues with local activists in their community. If you like to be informed and to expand your thoughts, listen to TMI on the Black Effect Podcast Network, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
And now it's time for the lightning round. Pew, 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 pew.
We do all of our sound effects are organic.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's feeling very real right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for our vulnerability round today, we will all answer this question, except maybe me. What's your favorite plant to grow and why? Like, Nicole, I feel like this would be between you choosing your children, but could you choose one?
I know. I was like, oh man, this is a hard one. I'm gonna go with parsley.
Ooh.
freaking love parsley.
Tell us about your love for parsley.
Parsley is like such a no fuss plant. I was just noticing we had like 5 inches of snow over the winter, and all my parsley just popped back up as soon as the snow went away. So it comes back at least twice a year, at least over 2 years. It is a host plant for butterflies. So the swallowtail butterfly and ladybugs love it too. So it's like such a good eco-friendly plant. It is a protector from pests for other plants. It doesn't need any special care. I mean, literally, as long as you have it in a garden, like close to the ground, so that you wouldn't want to put it in a pot because it needs to be watered quite often. But in just a normal raised bed, I don't do anything special for it. I can cut from it probably twice a week, just one plant. Parsley is full of vitamin C. It's a packed nutrient powerhouse. And I put it in everything. I put it in green smoothies. I put it in omelets. I put it on top of salads. My husband, his grandmother was Armenian, and she made this delicious tabbouleh salad with curly parsley. And then she also would just chop up like a cup of parsley in every fresh green salad. And so I've taken from her and I do that. And then, if I'm serving my kids like pasta and red sauce and I'm feeling like I'm just not making the dinner happen, I'll just cut some parsley and throw it on the plate as a little garnish and call it, a win.
Yes.
So it's just an easy, I would just say, it's such an easy, dependable plant and so good for me. And it's just a good one.
I love chimichurri. And
that's it too. Yes,
parsley-based.
chimichurri is to die for.
Yeah,
good. They're inspiring me. Parsley's going to go in the garden.
Yeah. Nicole, you can have mine if you want to have a second favorite. Because I want to get there.
Second favorite, yeah.
Second favorite, I'm trying not to do herbs and greens because those really are my 2 favorites. But I do, if you follow me, I grow tomatoes on an arch trellis, and that's like on the front of my book. And I love sun gold and Juliet tomatoes and black cherries. I think they're the opposite of parsley. They're not easy to grow. They take a long time. You only harvest them in a certain period of time. And I think it's that magical place where the plants meet the top of the arch, and it's usually like the end of the season, and it's like a culmination, right? It's just like a moment where you're like, wow, like all these little minutes, all these little moments in a garden, all these times I walked out here, they added up to this. And it's I walk under the arch, but I plant like 8 plants on a trellis. And every day I'm watching the plants kind of like edge their way up, edge their way up, edge their way up. And then suddenly you come out, there was like a big rainstorm or something, and you come out and they met. And, it only happens, like I said, for a couple weeks at the end of the season. And it's like the perfect picture of, the work of our lives when we do these little things every day and how they add up. And then you get to eat the results. They're pretty delicious.
It's so beautiful.
I'm so glad I gave you my turn. That was beautiful.
Glad I gave you my turn.
I'm so glad. Oh, Jill, wow. I know you have one.
Well, so mine it's not a veggie or a fruit, because my gardening is fits and spurts. That's how I would describe
yours is
it.
Aesthetic.
Fits and spurts.
You have a lot
happens for me
of plants that are thriving for aesthetic purposes.
Yeah, I like greenery for greenery's sake. And I've tried to dabble with plants and stuff, and it happens in fits and spurts. So for me, ivy, I just love a good ivy moment. It's easy to propagate, hard to kill. I just love it. I put it everywhere. It's all over.
That's awesome. I love plants like that you can just grow and grow. And you get a big bang for your buck with ivy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I need to put some in my landscape.
It's also a go-to gift for me too. I will just clip off pieces of my ivy, propagate it, throw it in a pot, give it to people. I did give one to Jen, although I've learned better because I don't think it's still alive.
Stop, it is still alive, Jill. Yes.
Good job. So that's your favorite thing to grow then.
She needs some more dirt though. She definitely has.
Yeah, we can get that for you.
She needs a refill. That would be great. Yeah.
Bring
but
it
she
on
is
over.
alive. She is alive, and she's alive because
Baby
I refer
steps.
to her as a human plant. She doesn't have a name though.
Give them personalities.
Yes,
Nicole, this has been so lovely. If only for us, it's been so lovely.
It might have been life-changing for me.
If people want you to be their master, if they want to call you master, where can they find more from you?
Well, you don't have to call me master. You can just call me Nicole. But my favorite place to hang out is Instagram at Gardenary Co. So GardenAryCo. We are all over socials. So if you like watching videos on other platforms, we're there as well under the same name. Gardenary.com, we have over 1,000, if you want to get lost in some instruction, we have over 1,000 blog articles that you could just search, and then you'd be able to see my method for those things. So generally, if you have an issue or if you have something you want to do in the garden, there's an article about it. And then we have a YouTube channel and a podcast. So same Gardenary on YouTube, and then the podcast is called Grow Yourself. And then, of course, my books. Like if you want just a succinct, like I don't want to watch a video, I just want to get the plan, then my 2 books, Kitchen Garden Revival, it's how to design and set up a beautiful garden that you love. And then Leaves, Roots, and Fruit is plant specific.
Thank you so much, Nicole. This has been so great. And I'm so excited for people to grow things and get more connected to anything that gets people more connected to each other and to the earth. I am giddy about, and yeah, of course this is going to do it. I didn't know why I didn't put them together, and I'm just excited. I'm so excited.
Well, thank you for having me. I think, I don't know if you've watched that show Blue Zones on Netflix, but almost every blue zones are, Dan Buettner researches these with National Geographic, and it's areas where people live the longest, where they live to 100 or more. And he just recently did a video that in all the blue zones, the people are gardeners. And so, I just dream of a world where our kids are growing up and they don't have to say these sentences that we say, that we don't have green thumbs and we don't have time for a garden, that the garden is just a normal part of their lives. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to share with you and your listeners. And it's called Kitchen Garden Revival for a reason, because I really believe that if each of us grew a little bit of our own food, we could change the planet for the better. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Beautiful. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Wow, I wish we could have kept going for so much longer. I got to watch something happen to you just now.
It was when somebody can shift your mentality or shift your mindset from just seeing the project to seeing the purpose for the project.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do with spending. Saving money and frugality is not for the sake of saving money and frugality. It's for the time freedom it gets you, the connection that you get with other people through sharing and connecting on Buy Nothing groups and Facebook Marketplace. And it's connection and good stewardship of natural resources. These are all the reasons that we think values-based spending and frugality are important. And she literally just took all that and translated it to gardening, basically spoke our words to us.
Yeah. And who knew
had
that you
no
could
idea that she would do that.
Translate it to gardening. Yeah. So what will be your first step? Based on this, you feeling intrinsically motivated now, seeing value for it. What do you think your first step will be?
So after we get the renovation all done up, I think maybe over the crest of our hot season, I might start with some herbs, maybe kale. The easy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't eat microgreens, but I do eat a lot of kale.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah. And Dan, my father-in-law, has always said how kale is so easy to grow. He's always like, please take kale with you when you leave. I have too much. So I don't know, like, it's not a big seller, but he keeps growing it because it just grows so easily.
It could be like a good, like she talked about having a lot of stuff in your garden. It could be a really good filler.
It
you
is.
know, it's constantly growing. It's hard to kill. So it's just a nice little addition.
So I'm excited to show Kai how things grow and how the world works. He'll love it. So thank you so much for listening. We love hearing your feedback on episodes like this. And so if you really got something out of this episode, we would love to hear a review from you, like Mrs. Grows Veg. Wow,
How
Goldie
perfect.
really found a good one for this episode. Called The Voice of Reason. It happens to be 5 stars. And they say, this podcast and the emails are the reminders I need about living a frugal life. Thank you for bringing our family financial peace and joy. Wow, Mrs. Grows Veg.
I love these short and sweet and to the point. They're so powerful reviews that this process of the friend letter and this podcast is helping you to find financial peace and joy is more than we could have ever asked.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you all are enjoying this show, please also take a minute to leave a rating and review. It doesn't have to take you long. You don't have to write paragraphs. You can write a sentence, and it helps other potential listeners find us. So thanks in advance.
Thank you. See you next time. Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
Okay, Jen.
Trees. Okay, follow up.
Yes. After we stopped recording, I asked a personal question about my garden to Nicole because one of the problems I have is I have raised garden beds on the side of the house, but we have a live oak tree that one of the branches is starting to hang over a bit, the garden bed. And it is a beautiful live oak tree that houses many birds and animals. But something that has been happening recently is blue jays hanging out in the tree, on the limbs of the tree, and they are pelting me with acorns when I go out. Like
they're bullying her.
Yes, they are sitting above me. And I know they're doing it on purpose. Blue jays and crows are some of the 2 smartest birds on the planet. They know exactly what they're doing. And they are lying in wait for me and pelting me with acorns. Like it's a fun little joke. I'm just trying to show my garden my shadow. And these blue jays are sniping me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was also a question about the leaves. Like the leaves are coming in, the leaf drops. And she said that it would be best if you can to move it. And then she said her book, Kitchen Garden Revival, actually covers like where's the best place to place your raised bed. Yeah. And so I was like, well, that kind of changes where I was going to put my potential garden. So I'm excited. Her mentality with learning from one person and treating it like a skill that can be improved. Just like, again,
that's my biggest takeaway.
And you got to learn the skill and not just like see somebody's videos on Instagram and try to recreate what they have.
Yeah.
Don't try to like recreate their step 12 when you're still on step 1 or 2. Because then you're going to think because you're not starting at 12, you can't get there.
Yep. We're obsessed. We loved it. We had fun.
It's brand new, season 2. I'm Marissa Thalberg.
And I'm Stephen Wolf Bedeta. And we're excited to be back having bigger, bolder, and always real conversations.
Straight from the C-suite front lines of marketing, media, and more.
We have great friends joining from people you may know, like Vilmer Valderrama and Bobby Burke.
And people you'll want to know. So grab a coffee or, hey, even an Aperol Spritz and come join us on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart.
Listen to brand new on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello. From Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, host of Womanica, a daily podcast that introduces you to the fascinating lives of women history has forgotten. We've always been intrigued by stories of disappearances, whether it's a fraudster from the 17th century who kept evading the authorities, or a novelist who taunted the Nazis and faked her own death. We all want to know what happened next. To find out, listen to Womanica on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You don't put those inside of you, do you?
This is a show about women.
I mean, you do?
Finally, a show about women that isn't just a thinly veiled aspirational nightmare. It's not hosted, not narrated. We're just dropping into a woman's world.
I found out when my dad was gay when I was 10. We were in a convertible on the 405 freeway, listening to the B-52s. And looking back, I should have said, this is gay. This is already all gay.
Listen to Finally a Show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.